Friendslop is a really stupid word. It's an unofficial term often used to describe video games that are relatively cheap, usually below $20, and offer a cooperative experience where you and a group of your buddies are working towards some goal, whether it be collecting items or going from point A to point B. Most of these games are made with stylized low-fidelity graphics, have some form of proximity chat, and a low skill curve that makes it so pretty much anyone who's ever touched a keyboard can get the hang of things pretty quickly. They also put special emphasis on something the AAA games industry has seemingly forgotten about: the Parmigiano Romano. You probably thought I was going to be generic and say fun, didn't you? Well, that too. In this video, I'd like to go over a bit of history regarding how Friendslop came to be, the flagship games that led its charge into the broader public, what made them special, and why I believe Yap Yap, the most recent of these titles, could be the peak of this genre if the developers play their cards right. And rest assured, I will be approaching all of this from as objective of an angle as I possibly can, with absolutely zero of my own personal bias involved. I really do hate the word Friendslop. Unless you're a pig or enjoy playing Valorant, the word slop always has a negative connotation attached to it. Add it to anything and it implies that piece of media isn't worth paying attention to. AI-generated slop. Slop music like Benson Boone or Biba Doobie. Goon slop. What are we doing? You could for real just add this word to anything and it'll be seen as an insult. And most of the time, it works. The reason Friendslop irks me is because it's one of the few times where it doesn't. It undermines what games like RV There Yet and Content Warning are trying to achieve. They aren't meant to be these life-changing experiences with infinite replayability, super in-depth systems, or jaw-dropping graphics. It's like comparing fast food with some gourmet steakhouse while forgetting that fast food can still be good. Playing AAA games nowadays is unironically like gambling. Battle passes, live service titles that are straight up unfinished, $70 products that somehow feel cheaper than $10 indie products. It's gotten to the point where when a AAA game actually feels like a AAA game, the internet treats it as some sort of big surprise when it should be the norm. If a title has upwards of $50 million invested into it, I would expect it to be at least decent. But unfortunately, there is one thing that these big budget studios just can't buy, and that is the talent to make a game fun. So because of this gaping hole in the industry, it only makes sense that indie devs would step up and create a shorter, more affordable experience that anybody could play. Not every meal has to be from a 5-star menu that I need to drive to, possibly pay for valet parking, and get overcharged for when I might not even enjoy it. Sometimes you just want something simple, affordable, and fun to share with some friends. And that doesn't make it slop. Which is why for the rest of this video, we'll be calling it Friend Peak. Argue with a wall. God forbid I can't count every pixel on a horse's nutsack. I, for one, love when I need to spend $10 on a seasonal battle pass just for the chance at getting some good-looking cosmetics. Unless it's Marvel Rivals. Goddamn. But when exactly did this unofficial genre of independent games begin to take shape? In the beginning, there was nothing. Until Tic-Tac-Toe was created by a small indie developer. It was cheap, required no skill, and had to be played with someone else. It became the first recorded instance of Friend Peak. And the game was good. So good, in fact, that it hasn't received any updates since it dropped. No patches or reworks, no DLC or microtransactions. And then, no more games were made. There was no need. The world was at peace. Until World War II, warfare had evolved past guns and bombs, taking on the form of spying and counterintelligence. Espionage. And due to increasing pressure from the Axis powers, the Allies needed to do something, so they began developing a secret weapon, one more confidential than the Manhattan Project. A game. One that trained their spies to be able to sniff out the imposters among us more easily. That's right. Among Us became the first modern rendition of Friend Peak. At least the most popular one. We've all played it at least once, a game about social deduction where you and some buddies are stuck on a spaceship with one of you being an imposter. Conceptually, it's been done before, but what I think made Among Us blast through the stratosphere in terms of popularity was a combination of two things: accessibility and COVID. Even at full price, it's only $5 on Steam and completely free on mobile, so literally anybody could play it. And seeing as how most of the world was on lockdown during the COVID-19 pandemic, a mere 2 years after the game was first released, those who wanted to spend time with friends were more than willing to do so on the silly spaceship game that even non-gamers could get into. However, it wasn't until October 23rd, 2023 that the unofficial genre would truly begin to take shape. The first Horsemen of Friend Peak was born. Lethal Company is truly generational. I would go as far as to say it's in the same vein as something like Five Nights at Freddy's and how it came out of nowhere and completely changed the landscape of gaming forever. You couldn't escape this shit when it first trailers dropped on the airwaves, TikToks of gameplay clips were popping up left, right, and center, YouTube video essays dotted the front page, and of course, the gameplay videos.
Give me him back! Give him back!
Joined into this random dude. Bye-bye.
Guys, I think we have a problem.
This shit was a phenomenon with an all-time peak of over 240,000 concurrent players according to SteamDB, and a pretty consistent player base even after 2 years. All made by one guy, by the way. It blended horror and comedy perfectly. The proximity chat used filters that made it so that voices of players were muffled behind walls and sounded staticky if communicating over a walkie-talkie, a formula that would be taken a step further in many other Friendpeak games, which we'll get into in a second. Combine this ambient voice system with monsters that react to the player's sounds, like the eyeless dogs, which can only tell where you are when you speak, and you get an incredibly immersive experience where players became 5-star voice actors overnight. The low fidelity graphics and banging soundtrack contributed heavily to the atmosphere of dread the game conveys, doing wonders for its ambience, which was a huge draw for me when I first started playing. Going into Lethal Company blind in that first week of hype after it dropped is one of my top 5 gaming experiences ever. I'm being so serious. All of this for $10. The concept was simple but ingenious. A team of up to 4 players are dispatched by some faceless corporation to search for scrap on a series of alien moons crawling with eldritch horrors, which they're then supposed to sell back to said corporation to meet their quota, and if they fail, they die. And with every successful run, players could use their money to buy better equipment that would hopefully make the future runs easier and more profitable to compete with the ever-increasing quota. That's it. That's the game. It would obviously receive a ton of updates as time went on, but the skeleton of this loop would go on to become the foundation of Friendpeak as we know it, and much like FNAF, immediately spawned tons of clones. However, from the ashes of the fire that was sparked, a handful of titles would pop up that would innovate and take things a step further. The first major hit being I love Repo, the second horseman of Friendpeak. This is you. You are a robot tasked with going into all sorts of procedurally generated mansions, laboratories, and museums in a team of up to 5 people to collect items and bring them back to the taxman. Who's the taxman, you ask? Why does he want you to collect these things? But, much like in Lethal Company, if the quota isn't met before the end of your run, you die. Think of it as paying rent for existing. However, there are a few key ways that Repo separates itself from its inspiration, primarily in how collection works. Grabbing and transporting objects is physics-based, meaning it isn't just a pick it up and put it in your inventory kind of thing. Rather, you and your teammates need to work together to move these objects into a special padded cart, because
pumpernickel. Oh my god, I broke it.
they can break. If you damage an item, its value will go down, directly affecting your bottom line. This adds an extra layer of stress, and if I'm honest, is great for clip farming. Couple this with the fact that some heavier objects require 2 or even 3 people working together to pick it up, and the very act of repossessing items becomes its own sort of minigame. The proximity chat here also received an upgrade in the form of voice filters that are affected by more than your environment. Not to mention, the developers made it so that your tin can of a character moves its head whenever you speak, which is just funny. All of this while avoiding all sorts of grotesque monsters that, unlike Lethal Company, you're actually rewarded for killing. And as you progress, the quota increases. Players can buy upgrades to make collecting easier, all that good stuff. Funny enough, the game wasn't actually inspired by Lethal Company at all. It was meant to be a single-player experience with a similar gameplay loop of cleaning up a mansion while being hunted down by one of the in-game enemies, the Headman, who, in a shocking twist, is a giant floating head. And while I think it's mechanically more interesting than Lethal, the ambience isn't as thick. The vibes just aren't all there, even if it can be quite immersive at times. Despite this, both titles are still an extraction scavenger hunt in which players are to collect items and return them to a specific area, a gameplay loop that places more emphasis on the journey itself with no real ending. And that is where our next game completely switched things up. Peak, the third horseman of Peak. In this one, you and your friends play as scouts with insane grip strength and back muscles whose airplane crashed on a deserted island in one of the most creative loading screens I've ever seen, and the goal is simple: reach the top of the mountain to call for help or die. The island is procedurally generated, divided into several biomes, and refreshes daily, so no 2 climbs will ever be the same. Players must manage their stamina and hunger while braving the steep cliffs, dense jungles, blizzards, exploding mushrooms, spiders, zombies, fields of lava, and of course, gravity. Along the way, you can find and make use of several items such as pythons, ropes, and foods that might just make things easier for you. And it's Peak. just as advertised. Because the game can actually be beaten, it feels like the next big step in a genre made up of roguelikes that only ever end when the quota becomes too large to meet. It also makes things much more single-player friendly since you can still get to the top on a solo run, only you won't have anybody to help you remove those fucking cactus thorns. Fun fact, Peak's publisher Landfall also released Content Warning, which was much more heavily inspired by Lethal Company. This one focused on going into dungeons to film monsters and other funny encounters with up to 4 people to upload onto the internet for views. Creative, but didn't innovate on the formula enough to set itself apart, in my opinion. They struck gold with Peak though. This game dominated the internet for the first month of its release and even now maintains a more than decent player count, for damn good reason. It's incredibly charming and honestly probably the most consistently fun to play out of the 4 we'll be going over today, not to mention the first of the list to not lean as much into horror. Well, except for him. I also think it's objectively the most well-designed game on today's list, but I would need an entire video to talk about that. And now for the fourth and final Horsemen. Admittedly, this game has yet to reach the kind of popularity that the other titles did, but it is far and away my personal favorite, so I really hope this video reaches enough people to shine some light on it, because Yap Yap is a vibe. You and up to 5 other friends play as the minions of a wizard tasked with going into a procedurally generated tower to vandalize everything in sight using magical spells that are voice activated while avoiding the monsters that protect said tower. You'll notice I said the word vandalize. In every other game we've talked about today, there is some form of item collection or at the very least preservation that acts as the core objective. Yap Yap is the complete opposite. The goal is to use your spells to destroy all the furniture, piss in as many vases, and burn as many paintings as you can, racking up points to meet that quota within 3 rounds. It takes the established Friend Peak formula and not only evolves it, but completely flips it on its head, and I love it. Not only because destroying stuff is much more satisfying than preserving them, but because it rewards chaos rather than punishing you for it. There's a certain level of caution you need to practice in Lethal to not lose anything, and most objects are practically made of glass in Repo. Yap Yap lets you do whatever the hell you want, so long as you don't get caught by the monsters. It's a furniture free-for-all. And part of what makes this so much fun are the spells themselves. The game was released about a month ago as of recording this video, with 9 wands in total that players can buy, each with a different set of incantations. You start with the Wand of Winds, which you can get for free in the lobby, then comes the Wand of Fire, which lets you breathe flames and roleplay as a Japanese pilot in the 1940s. You have the Blessed Wand, which you can use to heal your friends and practice forbidden esoteric black magic to resurrect them if they die. Then there's the Piss Wand. It lets you piss on people with not just 1, but 2 streams. Also, you can turn things into fish. You get the idea. Having such nonsense magic at the core of your game makes it so that literally anything is possible without needing some BS explanation. Not to mention, it's super satisfying to cast a spell by saying it into the microphone. Your voice has effectively become a tangible mechanic. You can have up to 4 wands in your inventory at a time, mixing and matching spells to create maximum destruction. You can even find this little guy in the waiting room where the ambience is unmatched. I think what puts Yap Yap above every other one of these games for me is the aesthetic. I am a huge fan of that nostalgic dark fantasy vibe. You know, the one that sounds like yeah, that one. Skyrim, V Rising, and pretty much all the Souls games are great examples of dark fantasy, but none of them capture that dreamy, hauntingly whimsical energy the way Yap Yap does. The visuals have this grainy post-processing filter layered above them to give it an aged look, complemented by the kind of low-resolution textures you'd find in a Minecraft painting. The lighting, I can't even explain why I love it so much. The dark purple glow of the moon, the flicker of warm candlelight, even your character's idle animations shift the pixels on screen. It all sells that nostalgic retro fantasy vibe flawlessly. The gothic castles you wander through hammer the whole aesthetic even further into your frontal lobe. Just look at this roof. I mean, that is just gorgeous. Everything is thematically consistent, and so many of these rooms are just dripping with atmosphere. The game is incredibly
cozy.
Despite a few stressful encounters with the monsters, there were moments I would waddle through some of these hallways and just smile from how immersed I was in this world. The game somehow manages to take itself seriously when it needs to, while not giving a shit about coherent logic in the best way possible. And I can't move on from this section without mentioning the game's music, one of the only 2 soundtracks I have ever spent actual money to acquire on Steam. I don't know how the composer managed to capture such an otherworldly, bedeviled feeling in a game about pissing on furniture. Just go listen to it on YouTube so you can agree with me in my comments, because my god, it is just perfect. But even besides the vibes, it takes the best from all the other games I've talked about, ramps them up before adding one thing that none of them even attempt. Moving objects around is physics-based, and killing monsters is rewarded like in Repo. There is a point A to B style journey to be had in finding the extraction room on the other side of the castle from where you spawn, much like in Peak. Dynamic proximity chat with hilarious filters, gameplay with groups of up to 6 people, and best of all, crafting. Because what would a game about wizards be without being able to brew potions? Once you reach the first quota, the moon will give you the key to access the basement in the lobby, which houses a cauldron and shelves to hold ingredients you find while completing your runs. Basilisk hearts, dragon bones, goblin gonads, these items can be used to create all sorts of potions to aid you on your journey. And if you're missing a part of the recipe, just buy it from this lady who has a disturbingly attractive voice.
Like so soon.
Boy, that is confusing. There are even mini games throughout the levels in the form of puzzles that give you extra rewards like gold and even free wands if completed successfully, and an occult room where players can perform a ritual to bring someone back to life in case they die, in what is one of the most creative revival mechanics I've ever seen in a video game. You want to invite other players to your party? Ponder your orb. If you get to the extraction point before your friends, you can spectate them by pondering your orb. This is Harold. You can trade with him. Yap Yap does such an incredible job of making it so that your standard game mechanics are consistent with this dark fantasy world. They're integrated so seamlessly that it's genuinely a challenge not to get immersed. And look, as much as I'm glazing this super niche title, there is plenty that I think needs to be better. The locations, while beautiful, are very similar. Despite every run supposedly being in a different castle, there isn't much that visually sets them apart beyond the name, which is a bit of a letdown for level variety, but it's an issue that can be fixed by simply adding more content, much like putting in new spells, wands, and enemies as time goes on, which the game also needs to prevent the loop from getting stale. The developers have said that they plan on polishing what they have now before they start fully dedicating themselves to putting in more content, but if this is the baseline they're working with, I think Yap Yap has massive potential to be the peak of this unofficial genre. I understand you might think I'm hyping up the game of the month only for it to become irrelevant within a few weeks, and the truth is, you're probably right. But this is one of those games I can see myself still playing even if it isn't bumping on TikTok or YouTube Shorts for no reason other than I think it's fun. And that is the beauty of this subgenre, the true essence of Friend Peak, playing a game regardless of what others have to say because you like it. Hey, look at you. You made it to the end. Go ahead and check out the rest of my channel while you're here. I talk about all sorts of stuff. I'd like to thank our members Zachariah Mahu, Frozen Bones, Hardy Streams, Iron Moose, Dracus101, M, Drago Flame, Echo CT21, and Timinaj. Memberships start at just $2.99 a month, include shoutouts like this one, and early access to future videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.